We're going to be covering a fewer number of chapters a week, which is going to let us to go into some things like we're going to ask the question, can I match their faith today as we look at this particular section of God's Word, these first 6 chapters, a little bit of review of the first 5, and then chapter 6 will be our focus today. Can I match their faith as we think about what has happened to Israel? That might be what... All right. This is just a disclaimer that I'm leaving up class to class, as some of the material I'm using is copyrighted. So if anybody pulls the PowerPoint down, they can actually see that the material was purchased. So in Joshua chapter 1, in verse 3, every place that the sole of your feet will tread, I have given you, as I said to Moses. Is that future tense or past tense? Every place the sole of your feet will tread, so that will, future tense, what? I have, past tense, given you. We talk about prophets and they have the ability to speak of the future as the past. But if God has set something in motion and made a promise for something, can he not speak of it as past tense? So here we have, you're going to go forward, you're going to go into the land, and every place that the sole of your foot will tread in the future, I have given you already in the past. That's a comforting promise that God is making to his people here. Everywhere you go, I have given you this land. We're going to come back to verse 4, skipping down and going to verse 5. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. You're Joshua, you're ready to go into the land. Do you need this kind of comfort? Right, here is God comforting Joshua, comforting his people. I will not leave you. I will not forsake you. And then that phrase that he says to Joshua over and over and over, be strong and of good courage. There's no doubt. And if I was Joshua, there's no doubt I would need a lot of encouragement as we're going into this section. Now let's look at that verse in between the two. Speaking of this land that he's going to give them, or that he has given them, from the wilderness of Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites to the great sea toward the going down of the sun shall be your territory. So I hope you can see this green area up in here. There's the river Euphrates, and here is the southern border. This is all the land that I have given you. Right? Great promises given by God to his people. Now, if you would come down with me to verse 7. Only be strong and very courageous. This is something that he says to the people over and over again. Only be strong, or it says to Joshua over and over again, that you may observe to do according to the law which Moses his servant commanded you. And do not turn from it from the right or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. Do you hear the condition in that? Do not turn to the right or the left. Why? So that you may prosper. You hear the condition in that statement there. But observe to do. Is God's word and is serving God an academic exercise? Yes. Is it only an academic exercise? Can you do it if you don't know it? But what about if we devote our life to knowing it, but don't do it? Are you any better off? Would they have been any better off if they would have known the law inside and out? Think, focus in on the Pharisees. If you had known the law inside and out, but it was all about the academic exercise of knowing it, but not willing to do it. We will see this play out throughout this quarter. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to highlight it, because we will see it playing out as this quarter goes along. Coming down to verses 16 and 17 as we set up for this quarter. So they, answered Joshua, they being the people. So the people answered Joshua and said, all that you command us, we will do. Wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we heeded Moses in all things, so we will heed you. Only the Lord your God will be with you as he was with Moses. They go on to say in verse 18, whoever rebels against your commandments and does not heed your words in all that you command him shall be put to death. Only be strong and of good courage. So, you've got the ingredients right here, right now, for a people of God ready to go do great things. You got a leader that Joshua that God has given the courage, and Joshua seems to have taken that courage. He's ready to go forth and conquer. What about the people? They got his back? Yeah, at least right here at this point, all that you command us we'll do. Wherever you send, we'll go. As we've heeded Moses, so we will heed you. Probably sweet words to Joshua's ears as he's getting ready to take over and start leading these people. And whoever rebel against you shall be put to death. Okay, yeah, this is a people who are growing in faith. Now, thinking back to Rahab, and y'all covered this quite well, so we're not going to go into it again, but 2 spies go into the land to go into Jericho to see what this is going to be like. And if you can't tell, that picture is the wall with the cord outside it. And why would I have a red cord hanging out of the window in a city wall? What was the promise that was made to Rahab? Yep. If you put this red cord and hang it from the window, when we come in and we take this city, we will spare you and anyone who is in that home. So again, you can imagine a red cord, how it would stand out as they approach the city. And for the people, this is the fulfillment of a promise, right? It's standing out as a huge promise before the people. Now, thinking of this from the people's perspective, God's building their faith, but what about the people in the land? Look down to chapter 2 and verse 9 with me. I know that the Lord your God, that the Lord has given you the land, and that the terror has fallen on us, that all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. How are the people in Jericho feeling about right now? They're worried. They're scared. There's a lot of words we could put in there. Scared, worried. Do they know what's about to happen? I find it very interesting that Rahab used the word, we know. We know what is about to happen to us. Anybody hear what was the topic of Steve's radio program this morning? Glorifying God. Right? Has God been glorified? You know, we don't really do things to glorify God. God has glorified himself. We are singing his glory. We are proclaiming his glory, what he has done. Did the people in this land know of the glory of God? What he had done? You better believe it. They knew about what had happened. If you go down to the next couple of verses, what had he done to the Red Sea? Dried it up. What had he done to Sihon and Og? Wiped them out. They knew who this God was. And I find it very interesting. It was not the people that they're talking about being scared of. Who are they scared of? The Lord. The Lord has done this. And we know what he's done before and what he's going to do to us. And as soon as we heard these things, our heart melted. Neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you. For the Lord your God, he is the God of heaven above and on earth beneath. You can't ask for a better proclamation of God. This isn't even a Jew, right? This isn't even an Israelite. You could not ask for a better proclamation of who God is, what he's about to do for his people. And these people know who God was. So at this point, God, in building their faith, he's even got the enemy preaching to them about who he is, what he is, and the comfort that this should feel. And just again to get our bearings, you can see the Jordan River coming around through here. I'm looking west to east, okay? So this isn't north-south. Jordan River, this is actually north. The Sea of Galilee would be up here, flowing down, Dead Sea down here. So here's the Jordan River, but I'm looking Transjordanic. I'm looking across the Jordan River, and I see up ahead, would have Gilgal up in here, and then going up into Jericho up in this area. But so you can kind of see this overhead view of what this looks like, and all these things are happening while the children of Israel here at Jericho. So again, maybe this is, we're still looking north is over here, south down here. I'm sorry, I'm looking due north at this time. Here's the Jordan River coming down. I've got my own maps confused. Here's the Jordan River coming down. At the time they would have crossed this, and where, I hope you can kind of tell the Jordan River gets pretty low right here. And during normal times, you could go across this fairly easily. But during flood stage, it said that this land is that the river would get about 12 foot deep. So if it's 12 foot deep, you're obviously not going across by wading across the river. And the flow of the river would be extremely heavy during this time. So this is the time in chapter 1 where we've come across, we're ready to go in and to take the land. In chapter 3 and verse 5, he looks to them and he says, and Joshua said to the people, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." Notice what Joshua is not saying. You're going to go out and do great things tomorrow. Most leaders, when they're trying to get their army ready for battle, we're going to go out and tomorrow we're going to go do this and this and this, and the army is going to flee before us. What's Joshua telling his people? Sanctify yourself, because tomorrow, it's almost as if tomorrow you're going to watch and God is going to do great things, right? We're going to be witness of these great things that the Lord is going to do. These great things that's been done to build up their faith. And something I think we can see, if nothing else today, God is making it very, very clear this is God, not them. This is Him, not them, right? God is saying, I'm going to do this one. We're going to talk about Jericho as the first fruits of the land of Egypt. The first fruits of everything for the Jews belong to who? God. And God's even going to tell them, hey, look, the battle for this one is mine. I've got this. The battle for this one is mine. God is making it very, very clear. As you go back and look at this story and look at this, is there any way, we know the story of Jericho pretty well, is there any way that you could look back and go, look what Israel did? Can you look at Israel crossing the Red Sea and go, look what they did? Look what this great nation did. No, God's making it very clear that the peoples have nothing to do with this. Just like the fear that Rahab had, they know that this come from God. So we come to chapter 4 and these memorial stones. Right, they're to take, we know the story, they were to take a stone from the middle of the Jordan River, carry it with them, and set up this memorial. Let me ask you the question, why did God want them to do this? Yep. So that when your children ask, this may be a sign amongst you, when your children ask, that you can tell them what? What God did for us. Not what we did, what God did. So that we could teach our children. Chapter 4 and verse 6, it says, "This may be a sign among you, when children ask from time to come, what do these stones mean to you? You shall answer them and say, the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant. When it crossed over, the waters came back." Memorials. Did they need them? I've become convinced that daily life is probably one of the major obstacles to Christianity. You know, how busy do we get in daily life? What does this memorial do for them? When they and their children were out walking around and they come upon these stones, why was it there? What were the children going to do when they see a pile of rocks? Ask. What was the first thing the parent was to do? They're supposed to tell them, but what do they have to do before they can tell them? Have to stop, don't you? You're walking along, I'm on my way, I got to get to the city before nightfall, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, and then all of a sudden my child asks, what is it, Dad? What does this mean? Well, the first thing I have to do is stop. Then I have to think, what does this mean? Now, who's getting the most out of this? The child that's hearing it? Getting a lot out of this. But what about, is there anything in here for the adult who's actually telling? Where else do we see memorials like this come about through Scripture? Acts 20 and verse 7, right? We could talk about the Passover, that for them every year was a time to stop, to think back, to remind yourself, to focus, or to maybe not lose focus on those things that are true. Acts 20 and verse 7, what is the Lord's Supper to us every week? Is there anything magical in these emblems? Not other than Christ said, this is my body, this is my blood. But stop, partake of this, do this together, proclaim the Lord's death till He comes. Much like this, stop and tell the children. So here we are, we got about 40,000 warriors ready to go to war. Probably both a combination of excited because they've been wandering for 40 years and we're finally going to go in and we're going to take the land. But at the same time, there's probably also a lot of fear going into this. And in chapter 4 and verse 14, and on that day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of the people, and they feared him, and as they feared Moses all the days of his life. We will see a little bit later, they were fearful. They served the Lord the days of Joshua and the elders that outlived Joshua, and then that's where it began to fall apart in the days of the judges. So, we come to Jericho. We're coming through chapter 5. We've got the memorial stones coming up. We're getting ready to do this attack on the land of Jericho, and it's not going to be your normal war plans. There's nothing about this that starts out that is normal, because we're here, we're ready to go. He said in chapter 3, sanctify yourselves because you're about to see great wonders. The Lord's about to do wonderful things. And here we come to chapter 5, and he says, circumcise the people. Time to attack, right? Nope, stop, circumcise the people. God is growing their faith through here. And we've talked about this several times, so we won't slow down here. But you come down toward the end of this, they partake of the Passover, and the very last verse, or at least I think it is the very last verse of this chapter, verse 12. What happens after they partake of the Passover? The manna ceased, and they began to what? Eat of the land. This bread goes out just as quick as it comes in, right? That in and of itself should be a pretty good sign to the people that everything that's been taken care of them through time, the Lord was doing it. And He's doing this in order that they may see it. So now we're ready to go. Everything is ready. The battle is prepared. It's time to go into battle. And Joshua sees a man with a sword drawn ahead in verses 13 through 15. This is almost like God saying, okay, he needs one last pat on the back, piece of encouragement. You've got this. I'm with you. Joshua saw, he lifted up his eyes, and behold, he saw a man opposite of him, with a sword drawn in his hands. What's the first question you think would be on your mind if this happened? That's right. Or in our good southern term, are you for or are you against, right? Are you for us or are you against us? What's going to happen here? Is this my first battle? So he asked the man, are you for us or are you against us? And the answer was, neither, right? No, I'm not for you, but I'm not for them either, right? What was his purpose in being here? He's the commander of who? The army of the Lord. He's the commander of the army of the Lord. Joshua does what next? He falls on his face and worships. And the Hebrew word here for worship is not necessarily the same one that would be used of someone who is of greater power and a royalty sense and you bow down and pay homage to. He fell flat on his face and worshipped as one would give to a deity. Now let me ask the next question. Did this commander of the Lord's army receive that worship? What happens in other places? Let's go to Revelation. What happens when John tries to bow down and to worship? What's he told? Get up. Don't do that. Why? Worship who? God. This being takes and receives that worship. So right here, before he's going into the land, this is deity. This is God who's coming in. And in verse 15, the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, take off your sandals, for the place you stand is holy. Who else has heard that? Moses. You think it's just happenstance that the exact same thing happens to Joshua that happened to Moses? No, this is building Joshua up. It's time to go, and Joshua did so. Lorenzo?
In this interesting encounter, you see how we often think in terms of size, before us or against us, and maybe ideas we have, candidates to support, they must be right because God is my side. But here we see there's yet another way, like you were saying earlier, it's God's. And you say, I'm the commander of God, the Lord, that's the loyalty. And then when he describes in chapter 6, this is what you're going to do is, you can be on my side.
Yes.
Thinking that I'm on your side.
And I'm going to take what Lorenzo just said and actually break it down for us. We live in a world that is extremely denominational based in the way we think, right? So somebody may ask you the question, what are you? What are they looking for when they ask that question? Well, are you a Methodist, or are you a Baptist, or are you Episcopalian? And even if you say, I'm a member of the Church of Christ, where's their brain? That's just another grouping, right? That's just another denomination of people. What's the commander of the army say? I'm on the Lord's side, right? This is different. This isn't a part of I'm on the army of Israel. I'm on God's side. And I think there's something to be said. Lorenzo makes a very good point. There's something very well to be said for I'm not on any of these sides. I'm on God's side. And that's really, instead of people trying to turn to Israel, that's what God's trying to do. I think if I can recap what he said, is turn the people to just be on my side, right? Be on the Lord's side in what's going on here. So, we've gone to the commander's manual and we pulled it out. And we're saying, how are we going to take this city of Jericho? This city's got huge walls, walled cities. How do you normally take walled cities, especially in this time? Well, you either siege it, you don't let food in and out, you let them starve. That's one way to take a city like this, till they come out and they surrender. Sometimes in these kind of battles, people, if time wouldn't allow for the siege, they would take and build dirt up and try to make a ramp to go up and over the walls, or at least close enough, or some man-made ramps they could roll up to the walls and then throw ropes and things over so they can climb over and go in. All right, that could be part of our battle plan. Sometimes when these kind of things happen, they'd set the men out to digging holes and tunnel under the walls. We think to Jerusalem, where they actually go in through the springs, through the caves, underneath and up into the city and go in and open the gates to let the people in. But again, our theme for today is God is saying it's me, not them. The plan for today is very, very different. God sets out the plan for how they're going to take Jericho. And he says, okay, in chapter 6, We're going to start with verse 1. Going back to the people. Now Jericho is securely shut up. That word securely means this was a fortified city. The gates are closed. Nobody's going in. Nobody's going out. No one comes. No one goes. They're shut up. They know what's about to happen. And the Lord says to Joshua, see, and we come back to this comment again, I have given you. I have given Jericho into your hands, its kings and its mighty men of valor. Has the battle already happened? No, the battle's not going to happen until 7 days from now. But it's as sure as dawn. And that's what, if we start thinking about and focusing in on faith this year, it's as surely been done and given to them as if it had happened yesterday. I have given it to you. That's faith. What about heaven and us? God says, I've given it to you, right? Yeah, there's conditions on our part. That's not what I'm talking about here. But that faith, those things that we believe in, it's as sure as we can get. Faith is the belief in things that we cannot see, the surety of substance of things hoped for. So here's your battle plan, Joshua, people. I want you to get up. I want you to take your army. I want you to break them in half. Half is going to go before the priest. Half is going to go behind the priest. Get the Ark of the Covenant. Get it ready. But I want you to take 7 priests, and I want those 7 priests to take their horns made of rams, their ram horns, and get ready. For 6 days, the people are told, I want you to get up, get in line, march around the city one time, come back to camp. As you march around the city, the horn is going to blow, but the people don't say a word. All right? So here, you're in Jericho. Think Jericho's got people on the walls watching, reporting back what's going to happen, what's going on? They get up. They begin to blow the trumpets. Trumpets are usually a call to action, right? So when you hear a trumpet blare, there's a fear, there's an adrenaline that kicks in. They're blowing the trumpets, and what do? Jericho, expecting attack, they march around the city. They don't say a word. They come back to their camp, and they set up camp for the night. People of Jericho probably confused? Probably. And I dare say the people of Israel might be a little bit confused. What's going on? You know, again, I think the people of Israel, they've never fought before, but they probably know this is a very odd way to go about winning a battle. Day 2. All right, today's the day. They get up. They set out. The army's in front. The 7 rams, or the 7 trumpets, or horns are blowing. The Ark of the Covenant. More army behind. They go around the city and they come back to camp. Think of the psyche of the people inside of Jericho as once a day for 6 days. They get up, they go around the city, and they come back and they make camp. Hadn't thought about that. That's every day as they march. That's right. There's the spot. Protect that one. That's where Rahab is. They would have talked about it, but you're right. They would have seen it as they went by every day. There's that red cord. Again, a nice mark of faith. Excellent point. I don't know what the enemy is thinking. I could only think of what I would be thinking if I was in the city. I would be extremely perplexed. And as we get ready, and before we do the, we all know the story that on the 7th day they're to march 7 times, and when the command is given and the long blast of the horn. So there's this, I'm thinking of it as they're playing a battle march or something as they go around once a day for 6 days. They're marching around the city. I almost broke out into the song on you, sorry. For any of those that are Bible class teachers that teach kids, say every once in a while the song is the thing that comes to mind to help you remember the facts. But For 6 days, they're marching around the city, and they're coming back, and they're going to camp. That horn is blowing, right? And I'm picturing some hymn, some, in my mind, there is some battle cry, some hymn that they're playing as they march around the city. But on the seventh day is to end with one long blast. And when that long blast happens, the people are to shout. And when the long blast happens and the people shout, the wall will fall. Again, God is making it very clear it's him, not them. The wall will fall, and every man will be able to walk straight into the city that is in front of them and go in and take it. With the exception of Rahab the harlot in verse 17, the city shall be doomed. That word doomed there, and then let me read verse 18. And that by all means you may abstain, I'm in the New King James, that you may by all means abstain from the accursed things, lest you become accursed when you take of the accursed things and make the camp of Israel cursed and trouble it. When Mama repeats something a second time, is it important? Yeah. We're going to talk about this word accursed. How many times is it said in that same verse? If you read the New King James, it's actually the original word is a little bit different, but by all means you may abstain from the accursed thing. One, lest when you become accursed. Second time, when you take of the accursed thing, you may the camp of Israel cursed and trouble it. What if Mama repeats something to you 4 times in the same sentence? Yeah, I want this to get through. I had one of those kind of hard heads, right? It needed to be repeated multiple times. This is trying to get it through and say, is this important? Right here, right now, this is very important. Now, I'm setting the stage for something for Wednesday night, yes. This is ultimately important. Anybody got other translations? What word might be used in verse 17 for doomed? Now the city has been doomed by the Lord. Or verse 18, that you by all means may abstain from the cursed things. American Standard, anybody got American Standard in here? What's that? Devoted. What does the King James use? I happen to know Jimmy likes to use King James. I can't remember what word it uses there. Accursed. Okay. So just like the New King James, that accursed thing, that devoted thing. Did I miss a word? Is there another word that translators use? Under the ban. That Hebrew word, that word ban is kind of the original Hebrew word there. That this thing is wholly devoted to God. So this city, everything in this city is what? Verse 17, doomed. Verse 18, accursed or devoted. In this particular case, I kind of like the American Standard reading of that a little bit better, that this city, because what about the first fruits? What about the firstborn? What about the first fruits, right? These are the things that you give back to God. God's going to take the battle and perform the battle and lay the city out for them to go in and to take. And this is devoted to God. Everything in this city is to be devoted to God. He makes the point, don't take anything out of this city. Because if you do, you're going to bring a curse on yourself, right? Where's the curse going to go? The camp. You'll bring a curse upon Israel. So again, cliffhanger for Wednesday night. Hold on to that fact. But this thing of devoted, this city is wholly devoted over to God. So they do. They go around the 7th time on the 7th day, and then everything is building up. The people in Jericho would know something is different. They're at least doing it more times today, right? They went around once, they went around twice, they've gone around a third time. This isn't like the first 6 days. The trumpets are blowing, and on the 7th day, after they've gone around 7 times, one long, loud blast. The people shout, and the walls fall. How did it happen? There's all kind of people that have had all kind of speculation. But let me ask you, it's a really simple question. How did it happen? God did it. right? God brought the walls down. How did God bring the walls down and leave Rahab and her family intact? God did it, right? The walls come tumbling down, and it says each man can walk straight into the city. I wish I had that map. I wish I'd have duplicated that map of what Jericho and kind of how a city like that would have looked sitting in the middle of the desert. But when this happened and the stones would have fallen, this was a mighty fortress, and this was kind of the gateway to protect the central plains of this land from enemies coming in across the Jordan. So if one of your major fortress cities falls, is that a bad thing for the Canaanites? And who takes this one? God takes this one. The walls fall, and every man can go in front of them. And their command is to go in and to destroy everything. And this is something that's hard for our mind to understand. But when God said destroy everything, He meant wipe out everything in this city. It is wholly devoted to God. It is a sacrifice. It is to be offered up to God. The only things they were to keep out of the city was what? Yep, the things, the gold, the silver, the bronze, that would go into the treasury of the Lord. But if it was not one of those things to go into the treasury of the Lord, what would have been in that city? Well, we know from the story of Achan what were some of the things that would have been in the city. There had been great robes, royal robes. Would there have been idols in the city? You know, think about all the other types of luxuries that would have been in the city. You've been wandering, you've been living in a tent, and you're walking into some of the richest houses around. And yeah, there's gold and silver, and those things can go to the Lord, but there's all kind of other things, the best of the clothing, the best of everything. And that's what warriors normally get. But here, it's devoted to the Lord. And the last thing we'll say today is don't rebuild the city. After the city was taken, the command is given, don't rebuild the city. And for a long time, people listened. But if you go forward into 1 Kings chapter 16, down to verse 34, this is in the days of Ahab, verse 33. Ahab made a wooden image. Ahab did more to provoke the Lord of Israel to anger than all the kings before him. So it's not shocking this happened in his days. Verse 34, and in the days of Hiel of Bethel built Jericho. And what happened? He laid the foundation with his son Abiram and his youngest son Segub. He set the gates with the life of each. When God makes a promise, as insignificant as it may sound, should we listen? Many years went by, but His word will be fulfilled. And with taking of Jericho, He made it very clear, it's not you, it's me. This city, I'm taking it. All right,